Rent just dropped below $400 in a US city, and no one's talking about it. Not the news, not TikTok, not even your friend who invests in real estate. Because this isn't LA getting slightly less unaffordable. This is a hidden network of forgotten towns where rent isn't just low, it's broken. We've been trained to think that rising rent is universal, like gravity or bad airport coffee. But what if I told you there are places right now where rent is crashing, and not for the reasons you think. Not because they're ugly, not because they're dangerous, because the system quietly rewired itself when nobody was looking. Industry exits, broken pipelines, empty campuses, zoning flips, ghost malls, and neighborhoods where rent is dropping faster than attention spans. So today, we're counting down 10 US cities where rent is crashing, and locals can't believe how low it's gotten. These aren't your usual suspects. They're the kinds of places that make you pause and go, wait, where even is that? One town has mine tunnels under every street. Another lost 40% of its population and still has a quilt museum. Think you know the best cities to live cheap? Let's find out. And trust me, you're not ready for what's next. Choosing wrong could cost you thousands or your sanity. In one place, TikTok survivalists are driving rent up. Want more data-backed weirdness the internet forgets to mention? Hit subscribe. It's cheaper than your rent. Let's break it down. Number 10, Danville, Illinois. Danville, Illinois, where the rent is so low you could pay it with couch coins and still have enough left for a gas station donut. Okay, here's the headline. Average rent in Danville just dropped below $470 per month. That's not a typo. That's a one-bedroom apartment for the price of 2 DoorDash orders in LA. But here's the twist. It didn't happen because Danville is dying. It happened because Danville got ghosted by the healthcare industry. When OSF Healthcare relocated a major facility in 2022, it left hundreds of middle-income renters with nothing to rent for. Jobs went poof. Demand went poof. Suddenly, Danville was full of gorgeous old buildings, empty apartments, and landlords offering move-in deals that sound like scams, but aren't. Median rent, $469. Population, 28,000 and dropping. Vacancy rate, over 18%. Cost of living, 27% lower than the national average. Crime rate, high, but weirdly petty. Mostly petty theft, not gunfights. And here's the kicker. Danville quietly changed its zoning in 2023 to allow mixed-use live workspaces downtown. Suddenly, those empty second-floor offices above vape shops? Legal lofts. Legal lofts. Under $600. So what happens when rent crashes in a place like this? Well, ironically, creatives move in. Remote workers. Artists. One guy turned an old dental office into a TikTok set. Another runs a vintage camera shop out of a space that used to be a DMV. Danville went from dentist chairs to DSLR in a year. Let's be real though. Living here isn't all $500 rent and repurposed banks. Danville has some of the worst potholes in Illinois. And I say that knowing full well the entire Midwest is basically one giant asphalt graveyard. Like you'll be driving to Aldi and accidentally discover a sinkhole. It's not even a joke. The streets eat tires for breakfast. And if you think Danville's low-key weird, the next city? It's legally split in half, and only one side got the memo that rent's still crashing. Keep watching. Number 9, Texarkana, Arkansas side. Texarkana is one city, 2 states, and one massive rent drop, but only half of it's in on the deal. Welcome to the Arkansas side of Texarkana, where the apartments are cheaper, the traffic lights don't make sense, and nobody's really sure who's running the show. Here's what makes Texarkana weird. It's a single city split clean down the middle by the Texas-Arkansas border. Same name, 2 mayors, 2 police departments. One side's booming, the other side, well, that's why we're here. Let's talk rent. In 2023, average rent on the Arkansas side of Texarkana dropped over 21%. You can get a 2-bedroom apartment for around $625 per month, which is wild considering the national average is more than double that. Median rent, $625. Population, 29,000 on the Arkansas side. Unemployment, 6.1%, higher than the Texas side. Vacancy rate, 13% and climbing. Median home value, $98,000. Cost of living, 25% below US average. Why the drop? Here's the short version. Retail bailed. Major shopping centers, gone. Big employers skipped town or consolidated on the Texas side, thanks to tax incentives and more flexible zoning. Now the Arkansas side is stuck with abandoned storefronts, half-full strip malls, and a bunch of landlords trying to convince people it's quieter over here. The emotional vibe here is left behind, but still trying. You've got neighborhoods with beautiful 1930s homes going for the price of a used Civic. You've got locals opening coffee shops inside old insurance buildings. You've got landlords offering 2 months free, no deposit, and they'll probably throw in a flat flat screen just to get you in the door. But here's the irony. Cross the street into Texas and rent jumps by 18%. Same name, same vibe, just a different state income tax and a slightly shinier Chili's. So if you want to live cheap and still technically say you live in Texas, this is the loophole. Okay, real talk. The street names here are a personal attack. Half the roads have two names depending on which side of the state line you're on. You'll be on State Line Avenue and it'll suddenly turn into State Line Road. You ask someone where the DMV is and they say, which one? And don't even try to get pizza delivered across the border. Apparently, the cheese has jurisdiction issues. But imagine this. You're sipping sweet tea on your front porch. Rent's $600. You drive 5 minutes for groceries and somehow cross 2 state lines, 3 tax brackets, and 4 different street names. The weather's mild, the neighbors wave, and your electric bill is somehow $42. It's like living in a glitchy version of Sim City, but you're the only one who notices. Texarkana, Arkansas is like the left Twix of small cities. Technically part of something bigger, but clearly the one that's getting overlooked. Quick poll. If you had to live in a town split by a state line, would you pick the flashy, expensive side or the cheap, slightly awkward cousin across the street? Drop your answer in the comments. No judgment. Okay, maybe a little. Number 8. Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Once called the Pittsburgh that never made it. And yeah, it shows. This is a city that survived 3 catastrophic floods, a steel collapse, and more population loss than a sitcom after the lead actor quits. But surprise plot twist! Johnstown just became one of the cheapest places to live on the East Coast. Average rent? Around $560 per month. That's not just low, that's suspiciously low. Like, is this a trap low? So what's going on here? Rent, down over 22% in 18 months. Vacancy rate, approximately 19%. Population, 18,000, down from 63,000 in 1950. Not a typo. Job market, light industrial plus remote freelancers. Cost of living, 30% below national average. Median vibe, post-industrial meets post-apocalyptic, but make it aesthetic. Why is rent crashing? Because Johnstown was built for a boomtown and got left at the altar. Steel died, young people left, the housing stock stayed. So now you've got Gothic revival homes with wraparound porches sitting empty, just waiting for someone to pay $650 per month and light a candle. Here's the kicker. The internet finally noticed. Not the influencers, not the TikTok realtors. I mean actual startups. Some weird little software companies and remote teams are quietly moving in, buying up office space in old churches. And the irony? The city that once made America's steel is now hosting AI devs and content creators inside former ironworker bars. Rent's so low, there's space to breathe, to fail, to build something dumb, like a cat cafe in a bank lobby, and still afford your car payment. But let's be real. You will shovel snow here from Halloween through Easter. The potholes have layers. Literal geological layers. And don't even think about running errands fast, because half the traffic lights are stuck on flashing yellow, like they gave up trying. There's one coffee shop with oat milk. One. The rest still look at you weird if you order anything with latte in it. Imagine this. You're working remote from a 2-bedroom rental that costs less than your old studio closet. You walk down a cobblestone alley, pass a guy selling records out of a barbershop, and hit a thrift store that used to be a speakeasy. At night, fog rolls off the river like a moody Instagram filter. Unintentional, but perfect. There's peace here, and space, and a little bit of haunted small-town energy that just makes the rent feel earned. Oh, and weird fact, Johnstown has more cemeteries than Starbucks. Make of that what you will. Danville gave you art lofts for $470. Johnstown gives you a haunted Victorian for $580 and a free existential crisis. Your move. And if you thought Johnstown was the final boss of Faded Glory, wait till you see the next city. Let's just say it paused in 1996 and never hit resume. Number 7. Valdosta, Georgia. Valdosta, Georgia. A town so frozen in time you can still find Blockbuster signs. And people who ask what a VPN is. Once a thriving college hub, Valdosta is now one of the few places in the US where rent is actively dropping while Chick-fil-A lines still stretch into next week. Yeah, the chicken's hot, but the housing market? Ice cold. Average rent? $650 per month. Vacancy rate? 14.2%. Student population? Down 12% since 2020. Rent trend? Minus 16% in the last 14 months. Cost of living? 23% below national average. Median lease length? Now trending shorter, 6 months or less in student areas. So why is rent crashing in a college town? Simple. The college imploded. Valdosta State University, once the pride of South Georgia, got hit with scandals, faculty cuts, and enrollment declines that read like a slow-motion car wreck. Suddenly, student housing turned into ghost dorms. Whole neighborhoods that once served the campus crowd are now begging for tenants and pricing units at $19.99 levels to do it. So what does that mean for you? you? Well, if you're remote, retired, or just slightly feral, Valdosta might be the deal of the decade. You've got low rent, flat land, warm winters, and a vibe that's part Southern charm and part Windows 95 screensaver. There's even a local movement to turn abandoned strip malls into retro-themed co-working spaces and thrift shops. Yeah, the mall's not dead, it's just being reskinned for Gen Z flippers and digital nomads who run Etsy shops out of JCPenney's. Okay, but let's not ignore the obvious. Valdosta feels like someone hit pause in 1996 and never figured out where the remote went. Every store still has a grand opening banner even though it's been open for 12 years. There's a drive-through tobacco barn next to a kombucha bar, and if you ask for Wi-Fi at a diner, they hand you a brochure. In Valdosta, you can live in a 3-bedroom house, pay rent with cash, and still afford dinner at Applebee's, which, sadly, is still considered fine dining in town. In Boulder, Colorado, you'll pay $2,000 a month to be near a university. In Valdosta, you'll pay $650 and still live across from a campus that kind of forgot it was a campus. Would you rather live in a city that's stuck in the past if it meant rent that feels like a misprint? Tell me below. Nostalgia's cheap, but is it livable? Remember when Danville had dentist office lofts? Yeah, Valdosta has a lawyer's office inside a former Sbarro. You can't make this stuff up. Number 6. Butte, Montana. Butte, Montana, a town that once mined more copper than any place on Earth, and then just kept digging. Even after the demand dipped, the city, and the rent, dropped with it. Butte isn't just a forgotten mining town. It's a full-on industrial time capsule buried under a layer of snow, silence, and shockingly low rent. Average rent in Butte? Around $675, which is wild when you realize this place has mountain views, Victorian mansions, and a downtown straight out of an HBO period drama. Only difference? Here, you can actually afford to live in it. Median rent, $675. Vacancy rate, approximately 12.5%. Cost of living, 20% below US average. Job market, mining adjacent, some healthcare, and ghost tour operators. Seriously, rent trend, down 17% since 2022. So why is rent tanking? Because Butte never fully replaced the economy that built it. Mining slowed, then slowed again, then ghost town mode kicked in. And what nobody tells you is, there are still mine tunnels running underneath the entire city, like literally beneath your feet. Here's the catch. Butte doesn't care about keeping up appearances. The infrastructure is old, the buildings creak, and yet it's weirdly magnetic. Rent is low because the demand's low. But for people who want peace, authenticity, or maybe to shoot their indie horror film on location, this place hits hard, and artists are slowly moving in. So are remote workers tired of overpriced cities and algorithm-chasing lives? Some even say Butte is Montana's last affordable frontier, which feels dramatic, but also kind of accurate. Alright, I gotta say it, Butte might be the coldest place on Earth that isn't technically the coldest place on Earth. Your nose will freeze before your car starts. And if you're from somewhere warm, just know that black ice is not a rumor. It's the town mascot. Also, the wind doesn't blow here. It slaps. But picture this. You're in a $650 per month loft inside an old boarding house once used by 19th century miners. You sip coffee while snow drips past Gothic windows. Silence. No honking. No hustle. Just history, mountains, and the occasional mysterious basement that's definitely haunted, but charmingly so. In most cities, underground means trendy nightlife. In Butte, it means literal mining shafts and forgotten staircases that lead nowhere. Romantic and slightly dangerous. Perfect. Number 5. Binghamton, New York. Binghamton, New York, a place where the American dream once clocked in at IBM and now clocks out at 2 p.m. because the cafe closes early. This city used to be Silicon Valley before Silicon Valley existed. Seriously, Binghamton was a hub for tech, flight simulators, circuit boards, and innovation. Then, poof, industry exits, jobs vanish, and rent follows it down like a loyal golden retriever. Average rent, $690. Vacancy rate, approximately 13%. Rent trend, down 25% since 2022. Student population, SUNY Binghamton's still strong, but off-campus housing is saturated. Cost of living, 22% below US average. Crime rate, mid-level, mostly property crimes and bored college kid mischief. So why's rent crashing? Because the infrastructure outgrew the economy. When IBM left, it took high salaries, benefits, and the middle class with it. Now, Binghamton's full of charming old homes, leftover tech parks, and warehouses getting flipped into something eventually. Here's the ironic twist. Tech is coming back, slowly. Biotech startups, AI teams, SUNY research labs expanding downtown. People are realizing, wait, we can rent office space here for the price of a closet in Brooklyn? So yeah, Binghamton might be in a full circle arc. Except this time, it's quietly cool and still shockingly affordable. One guy literally runs his AI company out of a former pawn shop next to a pizza place. Power move. Let's talk about the weather. Because Binghamton doesn't have 4 seasons, it has 2, gray and wet. The sun shows up maybe 48 days a year. It's like Seattle without the charm, or vampires. And if you try to enjoy fall here, surprise, it's winter winter again. But now imagine this. You're sipping diner coffee in a booth with cracked red vinyl. Your rent is $690. You walk to work in a reused post office building. On weekends, there's a jazz night in the old Elks Lodge. You live in a neighborhood that still delivers newspapers, on foot. Life isn't glamorous, but it's weirdly cinematic. In New York City, you pay $3,000 to hear your neighbors argue through drywall. In Binghamton, you pay $690 to live in a house they probably grew up in. Chicago has better food. Binghamton has lower rent and fewer shootings. Pick your poison or your property tax. Would you live in a town where the rent is cheap, but the vibe is abandoned STEM fair? Tell me below and defend your answer. This is the internet. Like this video if you've ever considered moving somewhere just because the rent made you audibly gasp. Subscribe if you want your next life decision to be based on a weird stat, a collapsing economy, or me yelling about potholes. You know, the essentials. Number 4. Wenatchee, Washington. Wenatchee, Washington, a city known for apples, irrigation, and making people say, wait, where is that again? It's tucked between the Cascade Mountains and the Columbia River, a place that should be expensive by Pacific Northwest standards. But instead, rent has dropped by over 17% in the past year. Average rent, approximately $890. Vacancy rate, 11.3%. Major industries, agriculture, logistics, small tech. Population, 35,000. Cost of living, 19% below Seattle, but with actual sky. So why is rent falling here? Simple. Orchard automation. Seriously, the apple-picking workforce that fueled Wenatchee's housing market for decades, now replaced by machines and seasonal fluctuations that make rental demand unpredictable. So landlords are slashing prices, especially in outer neighborhoods that used to house ag workers. Bonus twist, the city rezoned parts of downtown in 2022 to allow agri-hood development. Think small farm-inspired suburbs with cider taps, goats, and rental units built like boutique barns. Here's the result.
But staying anyway. There's fast fiber, good weather, and just enough weirdness to keep it interesting. But it's not all artisanal apples and breezy rent. Let's talk about Wenatchee drivers. These are people who think turn signals are a government conspiracy. Left turns take 45 minutes. There's exactly one street downtown, and 3 people have decided it's a racetrack. Also, the city's idea of nightlife is a brewery that closes at 8:45 p.m. You heard me. 8:45. Like they're allergic to joy. But picture it. You wake up in a cozy $850 rental with a view of the Cascades. You walk to a cafe that sells both espresso and fly fishing gear. The air smells like pine needles and ambition. There's space to breathe, trails to hike, and no landlord trying to raise your rent just because Mercury's in retrograde. Seattle has Amazon here, like end of the world quiet, but rent's low and you can paddleboard on your lunch break, so whatever. And if you thought Wenatchee was a quiet surprise, wait till you see the next town, where oil crashed, time froze, and rent fell into. Number 3. Hobbs, New Mexico. Welcome to Hobbs, New Mexico, a place where rent crashed harder than oil stocks in 2020. Because, spoiler alert, they're connected. This little oil town near the Texas border saw rent drop nearly 23% in just over a year. Why? Because when oil rigs go quiet, landlords get desperate. And Hobbs? It's basically the Airbnb of the fossil fuel industry. Drillers check in, drillers check out, and the housing market panics every time. Median rent 2023, $792. Vacancy rate, 12.7% and rising. Oil and gas equals 41% of local employment. Crime rate, above national average but mostly petty. Cost of living, 22% below national average. College presence, yes, NM Junior College with a surprisingly good nursing program. Hobbs is home to Zia Park Racetrack and Casino, where you can watch horses sprint in a literal desert. Also, the town is technically in the mountain time zone, but most people run on Central Time, because you know, Texas peer pressure. Okay, Hobbs drivers? Imagine Mad Max, but slower. Everyone's got a truck big enough to haul a small mountain, and no one uses their mirrors. Plus, every gas station has both beef jerky and slot machines, which is kinda awesome, and also terrifying. Here's the deal. Hobbs may not win awards for scenery, but if you're remote working and need ultra-low rent, this is your sandbox. And yeah, oil markets are unstable, but when prices drop, so does your rent. Some people chase crypto dips. Hobbs chases diesel downturns. Here's the deal. Hobbs may not win awards for scenery, but if you're remote working and need ultra-low rent, this is your sandbox. And yeah, oil markets are unstable, but when prices drop, so does your rent. Some people chase crypto dips. Hobbs chases diesel downturns. Picture this. You're sipping cold brew on a porch swing as a tumbleweed rolls by like it's auditioning for a Western. The sky is endless. Rent is under $800. And your biggest decision today? Drive to Texas for tacos, or stay in New Mexico for peace and cheap beer. Silicon Valley has tech layoffs. Hobbs has oil layoffs, and cheaper tacos. So, would you roll the dice on Hobbs? Or is $792 per month too risky for all all this oil field charm? Drop a yee or nay in the comments. I need to know who's brave enough for desert rent prices. Number 2, Paducah, Kentucky. Okay, you know things are getting weird when Paducah, Kentucky, yes, Paducah, shows up on a list about crashing rent. Most people can't find it on a map, but that's kind of the point. This small river town on the Ohio is quietly experiencing a slow-motion rent collapse. Not flashy, not chaotic, just steadily falling, like a polite Southern apology. Median rent dropped 19% over the past 18 months. And no, it wasn't because of a housing bubble pop or a crime wave. It was zoning reform. Wait, what? Yeah, zoning reform. A phrase so boring it usually clears out city council meetings. Is actually what made Paducah interesting. Median rent, $685. Yes, that's a 6. Vacancy rate, 10.9%. Major employers, healthcare, logistics, and riverport shipping. Unemployment rate, 5.4%, slightly above average. Crime, below national average, but car unlocked thefts are a thing. Quality of life, quiet, creative, and weirdly charming. Paducah is one of only 9 cities in the entire world designated a UNESCO Creative City for crafts and folk art. Yeah, take that, New York. Also, it's home to the National Quilt Museum, which is either the coziest threat to your masculinity or the best date idea you'll never admit to loving. Every parking lot in Paducah is massive. Why? Because they thought they were getting a second Walmart. They didn't. Now every Dollar General has parking for 60. Also, no one knows how to drive a roundabout. It's a 50-50 gamble whether someone yields or does a full panic stop and stares into traffic like it's a math test. Here's the deal. Paducah made it easier to build multifamily housing in the past 2 years. Small developers jumped in, duplexes got legalized again. The town didn't grow much, but the supply did, which means for once, zoning worked, and rents dropped without the usual economic disaster. It's the rare case where affordability wasn't caused by chaos, just common sense. A town of 25,000 beat the housing crisis by literally letting people build more housing. Revolutionary, I know. Now imagine this. You're walking down a brick-lined street in fall. Leaves crunch. There's a guy playing bluegrass on a porch. You just paid your entire rent and still had money left for barbecue and bourbon. Even your dog seems more relaxed here. You start thinking in metaphors. Paducah, where your rent is $685, but your neighbors judge you harder for not waving than for anything on your criminal record. Real talk. If you're paying $3,000 in rent to stare at your neighbor's AC unit in LA, you could be in Paducah with a porch swing and your own parking space for literally the cost of a week's groceries in New York. Remember that 3-bedroom in Hobbs for $792? Well, Paducah just underbid them and brought quilts. Your move, New Mexico. Number 1, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Okay, look, if we're talking about places where rent is absolutely face-planting into the pavement, we have to end with Pine Bluff, Arkansas, a city where rent prices are so low, they could legally be considered time travelers from 1998. This isn't just about affordability. This is about full-on economic plot twists. Why is rent crashing here? Because Pine Bluff has been quietly unraveling from a perfect storm of industry collapse, population flight, and yes, a crime perception problem that's worse than reality. But before you bail, hear me out. Because Pine Bluff isn't just another town people left. It's a town that's weirdly rebuilding. Median rent, $626. Rent trend, down 23% in the last 12 months. Crime rate, high, but down 18% since 2021. Population loss, minus 25% since 2000. Investment, 70 million plus poured into revitalization projects since 2019. Pine Bluff has one of the oldest libraries in the South that's still running, built in 1913. Also, it's the only town I've ever seen where a funeral home owns the biggest billboard in the city. That's not ominous at all. Okay, so here's the thing. Pine Bluff is flat. Like, you can see your mistakes from miles away flat. Also, the city somehow has 15 auto repair shops and only 1 decent Thai place. Good luck getting your oil changed at 8 a.m. while trying to find spring rolls that don't come with a side of sweet tea. Imagine this. You wake up in a rental house that costs less than your cable bill in LA. Your street is quiet, real quiet. Birds chirp. There's a breeze. You walk downtown and there's art on the walls. Real murals. Coffee's $1.75. Nobody cares what brand your hoodie is. You actually exhale. Yeah, that's Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff feels forgotten, but underneath the boarded up storefronts and rusting signs, there's movement. The downtown is being rebuilt. New businesses are trickling in. The University of Arkansas has a campus here, and believe it or not, young families are starting to circle back. Rent's crashing here not just because people left, but because the town is trying to earn them back. And honestly, it just might. Pine Bluff is like your uncle's garage. Dusty, full of weird tools, smells a little like regret, but somehow it still works. So be honest, would you live in a place where your rent is $626? And your neighbor might own chickens and a drone? Drop a yes, no, or do they have fiber internet in the comments.